Hi, I'm Linda Stevens. I've been a master gardener since 2012, and today I'm going to talk to you about gardening with children, which just happens to be one of my absolute favorite subjects. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to start with why garden, why do you garden, and why should your children be in the garden with you? How about selecting your garden location? And what should you plant? What is a seed and what happens when you plant it? We're going to talk about what you're going to find in the garden, and that'll be soil, insects, weeds, and what should you and your child do in the garden, and especially how to make this a fun time. Now, without the virus, we would be doing this talk at one of the farmers markets. And you would be right here, and I would have activities that I would have your kids try in order to get a feel for what gardening is about. But with the virus, we can't do that. So we're just going to do the best we can. So why do you garden? If you were here, I'd ask you, but you're not. So I'm going to share with you some of the reasons that master gardeners garden. First of all, we do exercise. We do it for exercise. Now, some people feel all you do is walk around the garden and deadhead your flowers. They have absolutely no idea how much bending, stooping, lifting, bending, stooping, and crawling around in the soil that you do. We do it for diet and weight loss. The diet part is mostly that we can get good, healthy food. So much of our food anymore is over processed. They process the nutrients right out of it. But if you grow your own, you know what you're eating. We can say we garden for pride. How much fun is it when your next door neighbor leans over the fence and says, wow, your tomatoes are doing wonderfully? What kind of pride do you have when you take the extra tomatoes or zucchinis that you have and share them with friends or family or neighbors? We do it for sunshine and fresh air. I've got to say that during this voluntary lockdown we've been through, my garden has been my savior. I have just loved being able to get out into the sunshine and the air. Do you ever find a sense of wonder in your garden? As an example, zucchinis have great big leaves. The leaves mostly are flat, they spread out, they shade the ground and conserve the water in there for the use of the plant. But then as soon as you bring out your hose, or better yet, the rain starts, those leaves curl up and make a funnel, and that water is directed right down to the roots of that plant. I just find that absolutely amazing that it's planned so well. Gardening improves your mood. Far better to take out those frustrations on a weed than on your kids or your spouse. And it helps you think more clearly. Can the same reasons apply to your child? Well, exercise, absolutely. Children are still developing their gross motor skills. Let me say that again. Gross motor skills. And gardening is wonderful that. Also, just like you, it helps them to stay calm and focused. Diet and weight loss, absolutely. We've got an awful lot of chubby children these days. Gardening encourages healthy eating, and it helps to combat electronics. What about pride? Oh, yes. How proud can a child be to successfully grow cherry tomatoes? How about sharing the excess produce with grandma? And how much self-esteem can a child get from eating a cucumber that he or she grew themselves? That is absolutely priceless. A sense of wonder? Absolutely. Think of the zucchini leaf. And please encourage questions. The sense of wonder encourages question. And what about sunshine, mood improvement, and clear thinking? The answer to those is, oh, absolutely, yes. I want to tell you some research that's been done about children working in gardens. In 2017, PBS did a study. It says that working in the garden encourages healthy eating. Kids are likely to try veggies that they grew themselves. Gardening, they've concluded, gardening is good for kids' minds and their bodies. Gardening as a family provides meaningful family time. Just think of the closeness of mom, dad, and siblings all working together in the same garden. It allows for team building. Hey, brother, sister, will you come help me move this rock? And how about promoting communication skills? We have this rock here. I wonder how we can get it out of here. How are we going to move it? There's a theory that exposure to germs helps to ward off asthma, allergies, and autoimmune conditions. We know kids love to get dirty. So if they do it in the garden, it may strengthen their immunity and their overall health as well. There's another study, and this was done in California in 2008. They looked at children who were participating in school garden programs. Those kids had improved test scores, and that was especially in math and science. Science is pretty much a no-brainer because after all, biology, botany, that's what gardening is about. But how about the math? If you're trying to decide how many seeds that you need to plant in a 3-foot row, and those seeds need to be a half an inch or an inch apart, that sounds like a math problem to me. The kids who garden not only have improved test scores in the classroom, but that holds true on the standardized achievement test as well. They conclude that gardening creates a positive learning environment. The teachers report fewer discipline problems with the children who are working in the school garden. In class, their attention spans are better, they have enthusiasm for learning, and these kids show a greater pride of ownership and pride in their own accomplishments. Children can have a good time gardening. This is from a camp that was here, and outside in the sun, looking at pretty flowers, doing something useful, it's absolutely priceless. So you've decided you're going to plant a garden. Most gardens are in the ground. But here in Middle Tennessee, we have some awfully rocky soil, so an awful lot of people have decided to make raised beds. That's a frame that you set on top of the ground. You kill off the weeds underneath it, put in soil, and plant your garden in that soil that you have imported, especially for the garden. Or if you have a very small lot, or if you live in an apartment, you can plant your garden in containers. Have your child help you select the site. Vegetables need full sun, and full sun in gardening terms means 6 to 8 hours of direct sun per day. Spend a week or so looking around your yard, watching for places that do have full sun. Now, it has to have a source of water, so you have to be someplace where your hose will reach. You can't rely on the rainwater, and you certainly don't want to be lugging buckets of water any great distance. The area should have good drainage, too. If the site that you select is frequently soggy, that's not a good place for your garden. Also, when you're considering drainage, if you're going to be planting in containers, make sure you've punched holes in the bottom of the pot so that the plants can drain. Okay, so we found our site. Now, what are we going to grow? Have your child help you decide what to grow. Find things that he likes. Find things that you think would be interesting to try. Look for plants that have large seeds, though that's not necessarily an exclusive consideration, but look for plants that are going to germinate quickly, because that way the child will stay interested in what's happening. Some good choices to plant with children would be bush beans. They germinate in just 4 to 8 days, and they're mature in 140 to 60 days. That translates into a month and a half to 2 months. Cherry tomatoes are popular. Those you'll have to grow from seedlings, and you'll need to purchase the seedling from a big box store or a nursery. The cherry tomatoes can be supported with a 2-foot stake, and they do very well in containers. A cool weather crop that's easy for kids to grow are snow peas. Now you can't plant those now because it's in the summer, because it's going to be too hot. The time to plant the cool weather things is early spring or very late summer when it's getting into fall. Your snow peas will germinate in 10 days, and they're going to mature in 60 days. So 2 months after you plant the snow peas, you can expect to be eating some. We've been talking mostly about vegetables, but sunflowers and other flowers belong in a garden too. Sunflowers are really popular with kids. They'll sprout in a week, and you'll have small seedlings in 2 weeks. And an added bonus from the sunflowers is they make these great big heads. And when it's mature, it's going to be a source for food, and your children can watch the birds come to the sunflower heads to eat. A big plus. Other things that are good choices for kids are cucumbers, radish, lettuce, again, is another cool weather crop. And if you have enough room for it, things like watermelons and cantaloupes are fun to try too. I told you we were going to do some activities, so here is one. And if you were here in person, we would make a seed strip or a seed tape. But you're not here, but I'm going to tell you how to make it, and I hope you're going to try to do it on your own. First of all, with a seed tape, that's a good way to handle small seeds. You and your child can make seed tapes while it's still too cool to plant. They assure that the seeds will be the proper distance apart and your rows will be straight. You can make the tapes any length that you want, and they're inexpensive to make. Almost everything that you need to make a seed tape, you already have at home. So the supplies that you will need to make a seed tape is a roll of 2-ply toilet paper. You'll need paste made of equal parts flour and water, and mix it to the consistency of pancake batter. You need a ruler, scissors, a party toothpick, a packet of seeds, and a pen or a marker. Now, you might notice that we're using the toilet paper and the homemade paste here in order that we're not introducing any toxins to our garden. So here's how you start it. Begin by mixing the paste. Then you measure a length of toilet paper that's going to be the size you want in your garden. Now let's say, for example, that maybe you're doing a raised bed that's 3 feet wide. Each sheet of toilet paper is 4 inches square. So if you want a 3-foot long seed tape, then you're going to measure 4 in a 4, excuse me, 3 pieces of toilet paper in a foot times 4 is 12. So go ahead and cut your toilet paper, and that should be 12 sheets, should be 3 feet long. Now, this is 2-ply toilet paper, so separate the layers and then use your scissors to cut the length of toilet paper in half the long way. Then fold it in half the long way. Then look at your seed packet and find out how far apart to place the seeds. I'm going to hold up a seed packet, and hopefully you can read that. But it tells you the days to germination. In this case, it's very short, and that would be a good choice for the kids. The distance to depth is 1/2 inch, and the distance apart is 1 inch. These are radishes, by the way. So now you know how far you're going to plant your seeds, how far apart you want to plant the seeds, and that's 1 inch. So use your ruler and your marker. You have folded your piece of toilet paper in half. On the lower half, on the inside of the fold, use the ruler and pen and mark 1 inch points all the way across. You might want to skip an inch at either end. It doesn't make any difference. Then using the fat party toothpick, have your child put a dot of paste on each mark and then put a seed on each dot of paste. Now the radish seeds are fairly large size, and one seed per dot would be correct. If you're using a smaller seed like carrots or lettuce, spread those seeds out and make it easy for your child to pick up 2 seeds to drop in the paste. And if one seed goes a little astray, use a toothpick to push it back into the paste. Then fold the other side down over the paste and the seed, and press each seed and let the whole thing dry. I wish you were here so you could ask questions and let me know if this wasn't clear to you. So when the tape is dry, it can be rolled and stored in a dry place. I'm not going to tell you how I figured this out, but be sure to mark each tape. Include the type of seed. In this case, we could just say radishes, but if we are planting more than one kind of radish, we should specify that. And since we've got the packet right here, let's go ahead and indicate the planting depth. That also is on the seed packet, and then you won't have to go looking for that later. So when it's time to plant, you'll make an indentation in the soil, lay the tape on it, and cover the soil to the proper planting depth, and then you water it. If you look at the pictures, we have a picture of the toilet paper being cut in half. We have a picture of the marks on the toilet paper with the dab of paste going on it. And then finally, down in the lower right corner is a trench in the soil. The seed tape is there to be moved into that little trench, and then the soil will be placed on top of it. And finally, last thing, most important of all, make sure to water your plants, your seeds very well. So now, let's take a look at a seed and look at the parts of the seed. First of all, there's the seed coat. That's the hard outer shell, and it protects the seed until it's planted. The seed has a store of food. It's also known as the endosperm, And it's a combination of carbohydrates and protein that will supply the plant with energy while the seed is still sprouting. Last of all, we have the embryo, and that's a little part in the seed that contains the earliest form of the plant's roots, stems, and leaves. Now we're moving on to germination. And what is germination? Well, remember, the very last thing we did with our seed tape was to water. There's a process, that fancy word, imbibition, by which the water soaks into the seed. The seed shell is porous, and so the water can just come on into it. The water activates enzymes in the plant, and it'll start to grow. The first thing that happens is that the seed will grow a root, and that root's going to try to access the underground water so it can keep on supplying the seed with more water. Next, the seed grows shoots, and they're going to try to move towards the source of light or to the sun. Then the shoots will grow leaves, and then they'll begin the process of photosynthesis, which is a big fancy word that describes how plants take carbon dioxide from the air and energy from the sun and make their own food. So if you were here, we'd be having another activity, and you would be watching while the bean sprouts. I would give each of your children a seed, a paper towel, some water to wet it with, and a Ziploc bag. So here's what you do at home. You find a seed, preferably a bean or some other large seed. A sunflower probably would work. Fold a paper towel, get it wet but not soggy, but not so it's making a puddle. You want it to be very wet, but not puddling. Put the bean on the top of it. Mark the date on a Ziploc bag and put the seed and the towel inside the bag. Watch the seed and look for changes every day, depending on your child. He might like to draw a picture of the changes, or he might like to write in a journal what happens each day to the different seed, to the seed, excuse me. So here are bean seeds. Now the picture that's labeled day 1 is exactly the same picture that you saw on the previous slide. If you'll notice in the center, there's kind of an irregular area, and that is where the development of the seed is going to take place. Day 2, on the other side, the seed is larger. It's almost twice as big. And also at that center area, the seed coat has stretched, and you can see that something's going on there. Day 3, the seed coat is broken open, and the first root is out looking for water. On day 4, look at how much that root has grown, and also has changed directions. Perhaps it knows that there's water in the paper towel underneath it. Now you're looking in day 5, you're looking at the same root that you saw in day 4, and it's wrapped itself around the bean. On day 6, things are starting to get really interesting. All that green coming out is the embryo. It is beginning to emerge, and at the same time, look at how long the seeds, notice how long the roots have become. In day 7, the roots have grown longer and the embryo is farther out of the seed shell. Now look at day 8 and look at how long that stem is. That bean is looking for light so it can grow. Look at how the roots have grown also. And now we're at day 9. The center picture shows the whole bean as it was in the Ziploc bag. The stem is longer than it was the day before. On the left-hand side is a close-up of the root. And if you look closely, there's at the long root that's going through most of the picture that's sort of separated from the plant itself. There's small hair-like root fibers coming out of there. Those were all embedded in the wet paper towel. And finally, on the right side, you can see the leaves are almost ready to open. They're still enclosed in the seed coat, but they won't be for long. And day 10, we have the leaves, they've broken out of their seed shell. You might be interested to know that these bean seeds are in my garden and they're alive and well and doing just fine. So now we're going to move on to what will you find in the garden? Well, there's this black or brown stuff that gardeners call soil. You probably may refer to it as dirt, but a gardener will say the dirt is what you track into the house when you've been in the garden. Soil is actually a very amazing and complex ecosystem, and it happens to be one of our planet's most valuable resources. It has a lot of things, and I love this picture with the earthworm on top of it. Well, now if you look closely at the soil, you'll find that it contains lots of things. There are 3 inorganic compounds. The first one is sand. Sand is fairly large particles. The sand is needed for drainage, but the sand doesn't hold nutrients. There's silt, and that's a medium-sized particle. Silt will hold on to water, and it'll hold on to a limited number of nutrients. Finally, the smallest particles are clay. They will hold on to water. They hold on to water so much they can become heavy and waterlogged. It also holds nutrients very well. If you plant in clay, the plant will suffer because of lack of drainage. There is air in soil. The air fills the gaps in the soil, and it allows the plant's roots and the animals to breathe. And as you know, air is a gas. There's water in soil. It clings to soil particles, and the roots of the plant will take up that water. Also, there's animals in the soil, and they need the water. There's organic matter in soil. Leaves fall onto the ground. Small twigs fall onto the ground. Petals from a spent flower will blow on over, and they will rot. And as they rot, they're going to be releasing some nutrients. The organic matter improves the soil's ability to hold water and helps the soil stick together. And finally, soil contains animals, insects, bacteria, and earthworms, to name just a few. Now, if you were here, at this point, I'd be passing around a box of soil, And that box would contain all of the items that I have just mentioned to you. In addition, I would be sure that each box has a live earthworm, a live roly-poly, and the skeleton or the shell from some insect, or perhaps a wing from an insect, just so that you would be aware of the different insect parts. You can do this at home. Go outside and explore. Find some soil and look in it and see what you can find. Think about how the soil feels. Feel the texture of it. Is it smooth? Is it grainy? Is it heavy? Is it light? Describe the color. It can be anywhere from black to a light brown color, and see if you can find any insects. If you look hard and if you dug, chances are you will at least uncover a worm there. Some of the insects that you're liable to find are shown here. The wolf spider, of course, is not an insect, but it lives in the ground. It's a spider that doesn't spin a web. And what it does is it chases and jumps on its prey. It kills an awful lot of live insects. The spider does not discriminate between good insects and bad insects. We have a picture of a ladybug and its larva. They're both voracious eaters and will go through bunches and bunches of aphids and mites. The ladybug itself will live 2 to 3 years, and during its lifetime, it's going to consume up to 5,000 aphids. The larva, which is kind of an ugly little thing, is capable of eating 50 to 60 aphids every single day. Of course, there's the honeybee, who's also considered a good insect, but he doesn't kill anything. He's the pollinator, and he takes the pollen from one flower to the other and ensures that your garden squash and beans and tomatoes will all have vegetables. There's good insects and there's bad insects, but a garden can tolerate both. But beware, if you want to spray an insecticide on your garden, you're going to kill both good insects and the bad ones. Now, activity. If you were here, this weekend I was looking at my milkweed plants, and here's a picture of my milkweeds. All those little yellow spots are aphid eggs. If you were here, you could see them up really close. There's hundreds of them. And if left alone, just because of the quantity of them, they will suck the life out of the plant. Now, shortly after I took this picture, I sprayed the plant with a mixture of dish detergent and water. A few hours later, I went out and did it again. And the next day, there was all sorts of black spots all over these plants, which were the eggs that had been killed, suffocated by the dish detergent. A garden will also have weeds. Weeds compete with your plants for space, water, nutrients, and sunlight. But like with the weeds, a few weeds are okay. I have pictures here of 2 dandelions. One is that lovely yellow flower that you see in your lawn. The other one is a time bomb containing hundreds of seeds that is ready at the first wind to disperse and to settle into your garden to make even more dandelions. The time to get it to the weeds is before they go to seed. Get them while they're young, get them before before they go to seed. I can't stress that enough. Young weeds don't have established roots, and they're easy to pull. Now, the dandelion is a perennial plant and can be years old, and it has a big established root. If you can't dig out the root, and you probably will have trouble with it, get as much as you can, and then cut off the leaves right at the ground level. Watch where that is. You might put a stick or a rock or something by it so you mark the place. And when the leaves start to form again, cut them off again at ground level. Just like the seed that you planted is full of a supply of food so that that plant can germinate. Plants that are perennials store food in their roots, or they store them in a bulb or in a corm, to name a few. Once that food is used up, it can't grow again. So if you keep cutting off all of the roots, all of the leaves from the dandelion, it will eventually die. So we've talked about, now we know what we're doing, I think. And so what can your child do in the garden? Again, help him, let him help decide what to plant. What would he like to eat? What would he like to grow? Or she. Let your child help plant the garden. If the rows aren't straight, it really doesn't matter. Let the child weed. That's going to take a little education, and you're going to have to be sure that you show him which is your lettuce growing and which are the weeds around it. But for the most part, your lettuce will be in a neat row, and there'll be many of the same type of plant growing, and that's a pretty good giveaway, and your child should be able to see the difference. Watch for insects. Mostly insects hide out on the bottom side of the leaves, so that's going to require lifting up the leaf, looking underneath, and seeing if there's anything there. The plant needs water. Your child can do the watering, but unlike this fellow in the picture, don't water the plant, water the ground around it. When it's hot and humid, when the plants are wet, they can develop some fungus that is not good for it. Have your child help harvest, and have your child eat the veggies you grow. And one thing that's a whole lot of fun is when you're picking fresh produce. A fresh green bean that's young and tender is delicious when it's raw, right off the vine. The same holds true of cherry tomatoes. At my house, few cherry tomatoes ever make it into the house. You're going to need a few tools for gardening. Please do not buy cheap toy plastic gardening tools. I understand there's some plastic gardening tools that are fairly sturdy, but the cheap tools won't let him dig into the ground. They're going to bend, they're going to break, they're not going to do the job they were intended for, and it's going to frustrate your child. Instead, what they do with the children's gardens at schools is they let the children use an adult trowel and an adult hand cultivator. And that's pretty much all they need. If your child is big enough to dig, you might consider shortening the handle on an adult-sized shovel, and he might enjoy doing that. I would suggest having a magnifying glass on hand so that your child can look at the insects and worms, maybe see other things in the soil that you can't see without the glass. For example, if he could look at those aphids up close, they have funny little brown lines coming out. I'm not sure what those are. Oh, you might even consider a digital camera in order to record what you're seeing. And finally, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, make your gardening fun. It should be fun for you. It should be fun for your child. Encourage observation, encourage questions, encourage experimentation. If you're planting, say for instance, your bean seeds and you're going along and planting them all between an inch and an inch and a half deep, and your child says, hey, what would happen if we planted these all 2 or 3 inches deep? Go ahead and give it a try. Mark those and see what happens. This garden doesn't have to be perfect. And let the child taste the produce that you grew together. And finally, I've got some resources for you on the online information for parents. The first 2 studies are the first one is the one from PBS that I mentioned, and the second one is the one from the University of California that I mentioned. The last one on this list, PBS Wisconsin Gardener. These are videos of children working in the school gardens. I hope this has encouraged you. I hope you got some ideas. There's some books for gardening for children. If you have questions, look up the Master Gardener website. We would be happy to answer questions, or call up the Ag Center and ask questions. They'd be happy to answer them too. Well, I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you all today, but I hope it's been fun, and I hope you've learned something. You have a good day now. Bye-bye.